and welcome to Clamp, the creating, living, and making podcast. I'm your host, Grant Alexander, and before I get into who is joining me this week, I have some good news and some bad news. First, I wanted to let you know that we're going to be moving to a weekly schedule, up from the bi-weekly that we'd been recording. That's the good news. But this new schedule, combined with trying to find a time slot that works for Hawaii, Australia, and Canada, doesn't work for all the hosts. So, unfortunately, we're going to be saying goodbye to Richard from Poor Man's DIY. For you Richard fans out there, don't worry, he will be back in the future to cover for hosts when they can't make it for an episode, or perhaps as a special guest. Now on to some other exciting news. Morley is back and here to stay.
Hey!
My script says to pause for applause, but I think we forgot to add the live audience this time. And as always, I'm also joined by Adam Mackey.
Hello.
Hey guys, how are you guys doing?
Good.
I'm doing good. I guess I didn't really say hi when I just said woo, but this is hello.
Trying to catch up on sleep.
Yes. Sleep, yeah, with the new one. I'm sure sleep is a hard thing to come by these days.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations, officially.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats.
Yes, it's big change.
Big change, I bet.
Yeah.
So, what are you guys clamping on this week? How about you, Morley?
I got a bunch of things in the work. Today, I put together the 90% of the 3D printer enclosure that I've been working on. It doubles as a standing desk. So I'm pretty excited about that. The 3D printer has yet to arrive, but I want to have it all ready for when it is here so I can protect it from the kitten. I spent the last few days dyeing the wood with India ink, which turned out really cool. I'm really pumped about that. It added a really nice effect, especially contrasted against the plywood shelving. And some leather stuff as well. I've been working on a belt and a bifold wallet. A lot of stuff on the go and some video editing as always. Yeah. Next cooking show will be out in the next couple of days. It's a good one.
That's exciting. What are you going to be cooking up this week?
You'll have to wait to find out.
Well, how about you tell us? Because this podcast is going to be out on Monday and the cooking show is going to be out.
That's fair. Yeah, so we made pad thai, which is one of my favorite foods. Yeah. We went to Thailand a couple years ago and had some amazing pad thai. When we got back, we really wanted to make it ourselves and found this recipe, which has been a staple in our repertoire. Repertoire?
Depends where you're from.
So it's one of our favorites. And I think it was actually some of the best pad thai we've ever made.
That is something I'm definitely excited.
I love Thai food.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
My wife doesn't like it, though, so I never get to eat it.
Oh, yeah, man. All Thai food is amazing. If you want to eat well, just go to Thailand.
Well, that sounds like a fun week. How about you, Adam?
So I'm working on two things. I am replacing the shelving unit at the back of my shop with actual shop furniture because it's not sturdy enough for a tool bench, for tabletop tools. So I wanted to make something sturdy that I can actually have them all in place and actually use them because I never do. And I'm making a tool cart, which actually comes with a funny story. Well, not really a funny story, but I went to find my rough edit from 4 months ago to see where I was up to continue on my recording today and discovered that I lost all the footage.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. I mean, it kind of sucks, but then in a way, I think it's actually not as bad as I was first thinking. So I lost the footage of actually building the cart and the actual bones of it, but I hadn't actually put the top, because it's a flip top tool cart. I didn't actually attach that yet because I got stuck, and that's why I've left it for so long. So I think I'm just going to pick up the videos, just explain I lost the footage, but this is how I made this, where I'm up to now, and then go from there. Because really the point of the video is less about actual building of the cart and more of the mechanism that makes it flip and all that sort of stuff. So I think it'll still work out all right. Just kind of sucks, but
yeah, I had that happen in a video, and I think as the person making it, you get you can get oh no, I lost it, it's going to ruin the video, but at the end of the day, to the viewer, they might not even notice. Especially, like you said, if it's a relatively unimportant part of the project. Or not unimportant, but
it's pretty much just making a box, but Yeah, I actually, at first I was bummed, and then I thought, you know what, it's actually probably going to work out better. Like, it's not going to be such a boring video of watching me make a box. Like, just go from there. People, if you're going to make a tool cart, you know how to make a box.
Especially a flip-top one, especially.
I would hope so, anyway. Yeah.
Well, I would actually say, instead of saying I lost the footage, say, I don't want to bore you with making a box, and then go, and, like, your next thing is, boom, it's there. Like, do a little camera fun trick.
Yeah, I could do that.
It's way better than explaining it. Like, I mean, you're just going to drop...
Yeah.
My latest video, I just see the most amount of people dropped in the first 20 seconds on any of my videos because I tried to explain something.
I wonder if something's happening there, because my last video has got, like, next to no view compared to normal. Like, normally in the first 24 hours, I'll get, like, 150-ish views. I'm sitting at 45, like, 4 days later. So,
it is a cot.
And it's it's a French cleat tool wall, which you think people would want to watch, but I find that, like, the workshop stuff normally gets more views, so...
That's weird.
Yeah.
Well, I've never made a workshop project, so I have no input on that. Or never made a video on a workshop project.
I was watching the latest video from the Smuggler's Room yesterday, and I realized that, like, he's made hardly any, like, videos on making workshop furniture. And it's crazy for me to think that people actually make stuff like that and not record it. Because I'm just like, every time I build something, let's make a video. I need content.
I've never... The only workshop project I've actually filmed was the, like, miter, like, picture frame jig. The, like, make something / find woodworking picture frame jig. Everything else, I just build it. If it's workshop furniture, I don't think most people are... Like, I think other people do better jobs than me.
I think depending on what it is. Like, I know people like to watch Workbench builds and miter station builds and that sort of stuff. And yeah. I don't know.
They seem to do real well on the... Like, when you hear David Picciuto talk about it, he's like, I don't want to do another one, but they're my best.
Most of his videos are workshop furniture. Or jigs, etc.
When the money comes in through a certain, like, project, you keep repeating it because you need the money. But,
yeah.
It's like if Morley, if you were tired of doing belts, but everyone kept buying belts from you, you'd probably one day go, you know, I don't want to do any more belts.
Yeah. Not quite there yet.
No.
So, Grant, you finally got a mud kitchen out, so now what are you working on?
Yeah, exactly. I'm working on the analytics for the... No. I actually am working on the Instructables post for that because there's a Toys and Games contest coming up. So nice. I'm going to go through and make that. The real thing I did this week, though, is I kind of spent some time trying to make my home office look a little more nice and inviting.
I see you got a couple more tchotchkes in the background.
Yeah.
For the podcast that people can't see.
Well, I hung up my snowshoes that had been sitting in the office for like 2 years, waiting for me to put 4 nails in the wall, like, you know, the kind of stuff that you think you should be able to get done anytime. But that's mainly because I'm going to be working in here a lot more. It doesn't look like I'm going back to work anytime soon. So I really wanted to have something that was a little more inspiring. Because if I'm going to sit here for 8 hours and then, you know, sit here for another 8 while I do some video editing, I wanted to feel a little bit of inspiration. The other thing I've been working on is I've been doing some exterior DIY painting. Basically, I did some priming and some caulking, but we had some 35-degree plus days this week, and that just didn't agree with me. It made it a real challenge. It's all tongue and groove boards, and the paint was peeling, so it needed a lot of work. But I think that brings me to today's topic, challenging product. I think that brings me to today's topic, challenging projects. So, Morley's got something going on in the background there. Is that your cat?
No, that's Eden making popcorn.
Oh, I thought it was your wife doing the dishes.
No, I'm like on a whole nother floor of my house in the basement. So I like to record in a windowless room. Really makes sure it feels like a casino in here because you don't know if it's day or night.
Nice.
But anyways, I wanted to ask you guys, what's been some of your more challenging projects, and what have you done to try and overcome them? Go first, Morley. No, wait,
now the cat.
Adam. No, let's go first, Adam. Well, the
I can
popcorn
cut
pops.
Morley out.
That actually is the cat now playing in a bag.
All this is staying in, by the way.
Oh, yay.
Nice.
Well, actually, funny because my actual most challenging has actually been my tool cart, because I had an idea of something to use and then it just went wrong. But then I realized afterwards that it was actually me fucking it up and not actually the product itself. So, but yeah, it's well, the video should hopefully be out before this anyway. So essentially the top is going to rotate on like two Lazy Susans, but see, Lazy Susans
like two ball bearings almost.
Sort of, yeah, but like Lazy Susans aren't meant to be sideways. So I was having issues with that, but then turns out it was just my jankiness and that. So yeah, I got two new Lazy Susans and see how I go. Hopefully it's going to work, because the problem is that like I have no other way to keep the top from bowing out. So I need like the Lazy Susans to screw the two, like screw together, if that makes sense. It'll make sense in the video.
Oh, and that, causes force in them, not how they want.
Yeah, because like the tool cart is made to hold my table saw and my thicknesser. So like it's a hell of a lot of weight. But the Lazy Susans are meant to hold 150 kilos each. I'm like, well, those two tools don't weigh 300 kilos because I can pick them up easily and I can't lift 300 kilos. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then
that's it.
Well, like you said, I mean, if it's not designed in that direction, it could be 150 kilos in another direction it was designed for.
Hopefully it works out. If not, then I guess I'll put a pole in it or something. But the problem is that I can't use a pole like you normally would, because the table saw is sitting like in a cavity, if that makes, like it's sitting in a box. So like put a pole through, it's going to go through the middle of the table saw.
Just put the table saw up on blocks.
Yeah, but because the way I wanted it was that I wanted the table saw, like the bed of it, to be the same height as the bed of the thicknesser. If that makes sense. Yeah, so I don't know. If that happens, then I guess I'll revert and then I'll just I'll use a pole and I'll lower it down and then just have the thicknesser lower than the table saw or whatever. But, yeah, I'll find a way.
Nice.
But every other time I have issues with projects, it's always me doing something wrong with the tool. Like last week, I broke 2 routers, and then yesterday I blew up another router. So
oh wow, routers or router bits?
First, I blew up the router in my router table.
Oh wow!
So then I got out my handheld router, and that blew up. And then I got out my the Ryobi. Like the handheld, the actual like single handheld routers, the smaller ones. Yeah, got out one of those, that broke. Trim router.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
trim
blew
router.
it up yesterday. So 3 routers down. And, yeah.
Are you doing metal with a wood router? Or?
All I was doing was routing a groove for doors.
Wow.
So.
Well, I think maybe you need a new bit. Maybe your bit's a little tired or something.
Yeah, well, I did like 4 grooves with the trim router, no issues, and then I went to do another one, got halfway through, and it just it was like it was hitting a knot or something. It just didn't want to go any further, and then just smoked and blew up. So, yeah, I don't know.
Sounds challenging.
I didn't care about the first 2 routers,
really
but I'm annoyed about the trim router. So, yeah, I'll just have to go back to the table saw groove. But in Australia, what are those blades called? where you like stack.
Oh, dados?
Dados?
They're
they're illegal. So making any sort of groove or anything is really frustrating. Oh.
Well, what about you, Morley? You got any challenging projects?
Yeah, I mean, well, today I kind of rediscovered for the first time in a while that trying to do cabinetry work with 2x4s isn't like the most seamless of processes, especially when it's like relatively small spans. I mean, luckily I bought some clamps for a few projects ago, and I had enough to kind of force everything into place. But I kind of forgot that you really have to push things into 3D square. And yeah, I mean, I feel like because I'm not working out of like a traditional shop, that's where a lot of challenges come out of. But I'm getting a lot grittier and developing a lot of gumption and addressing those challenges with each one. And yeah, I feel like that's with most projects where I'm trying something new. There's always at least like one part of the project, especially if it's not trivial, if it's a big project where I'm like, is this it? Like, do I have to totally change courses, or is this going to turn out like nothing like I like? When it feels like all is lost, and then you kind of like come back from that a little bit. And it's funny, like I was talking about this with a friend recently he's a musician and an artist. And he was saying like, he feel like his best stuff comes out of really difficult trying like artistic processes. And he's like, do you think that's just like necessary to make something that you're really proud of and really love? And I don't know if it's necessary, but there's definitely something where if a project takes a lot of problem solving and like a lot more work than I thought, it's a lot more satisfying than something where everything goes right. That's always nice when everything goes right in a project, but to have those ones where you really feel like you overcame something, I feel like is like a huge confidence builder, and you feel like you can kind of tackle stuff you never really thought you could before afterwards. You're more willing to dive into something maybe you don't know as much about.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is the potential for fail. You see it more readily when you're overcoming a challenge, and you feel like, I got around that fail point, you know?
Yeah. And I think in some of my earlier fails, a lot of it comes from kind of getting tunnel vision and just trying to like get really efficient in a process, but not taking a step back and realizing that like I'm doing something that's, I don't know, causing the whole piece to go out of square or kind of losing sight of the bigger goal. And I feel like one of the biggest things I've learned over time is just like realizing when I should step back and think about something before like trying to do it as fastly and efficiently as possible, because you might just cause like another 8 hours of work that you didn't realize.
Oh man, there's so many times where for people who don't know, I also work on a race team and work on race cars all the time. And there's so many times where it's like, if you just remove this like 3 bolts, remove this part, everything would be so much easier, but instead we don't. And we spend like 3 times as much time trying to undo something way down in the engine because we didn't think the whole process through. We didn't take that step back and go, that 5 minutes of work would actually make an hour's worth of, time savings. So I totally get what you're saying on that. Well, I think for me, there's been a lot of challenging projects. I think one of the smaller ones that I recently did, and that kind of highlights, paying attention, which I really felt like I did it right at the time, but it didn't work out, is I made these magnetic poster frames. So they basically have a bar at the top and a bar at the bottom of the poster. These were like giant, 6 foot tall posters. So they're not easy to test anything out, and they're like 6 foot long pieces of wood. And basically, I put the magnets in, and I thought I kept testing everyone, because you got to do one side is one magnet and the other side's the other magnet so that they come together, right? Get the whole thing done, go to snap them together, and a couple of them were the wrong way.
No.
And I just went, what am I going to do with these, they're the neodymium or whatever, the rare earth magnets? There's like big, giant 3/4 inch rare earth magnets. What am I going to do with these? Like, how am I going to get these out of their now epoxied in place in this piece of wood? What am I going to be doing? So that was like just a kind of a challenge. And then in the end, what I did is I just sacrificed my Forstner bit to the neodymium gods and used it for drilling out some metal. It was not safe, but the person was coming the next day to pick it up, so I had to get it done. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this and find out how much of a hack job I am. But yeah, no, it was really, like, the challenge was just like in overcoming something that seemed so simple and yet made it much more difficult.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw David Picciuto, I'm pretty sure it was David Picciuto, posted on Twitter a while back this really great graphic of the like the storyline of a project. And it's like, you get an idea. This idea is awesome. And then you start doing it and you're like, okay, this is going to be so great. And then you start it and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be nothing like I thought it was. And all is lost. And then you kind of end somewhere in the middle where you're like, okay, this is good. We got over something and it's not quite like I expected, but it's good.
Yeah. Well, you got any other ones there, Adam? Got something maybe that you have already overcome?
Well, actually, yeah. My when I was building my router table, it took me months to decide how to like lift the thing, like make a router lift, and that's probably one of like the biggest challenges I've come to with shop furniture, like trying to work out how to make something work properly. And every time I look something up, it's like every time you research a router, like homemade router lift, it's always, I made a router table and then bought this Craig jig. Or like, it's so fucking annoying. Like, no one makes homemade router lifts, and like, it's really. And then I found one, and someone used like a was like a car jack, which I thought was a pretty cool idea, but I don't know, I didn't have one laying around, and then came up with my own and stuff. But yeah, it's that was a fun one.
Yeah, like I'm currently recording from my my like cantilevered counterweighted mic stand that I built. And I definitely feel you, Adam. Like, this was a project where like I would do one step and then wait like 3 days while I like really let it mull over and decide how to do the next thing. Because when you're trying to like kind of make up a new mechanism, or something that like you don't think someone else is, or you couldn't find someone else has done exactly the same thing. Like, I mean, I've talked to Andy Berkey about it a bit, where it's just like, it gets really mentally draining.
Definitely.
And you just feel like, because you can go like 10 different ways. And it starts to get into industrial design a bit, and you're thinking a lot about usability and ergonomics and everything else. And it's like, just got to decide on something. I'll probably finish it and think like, I could have done this way. It'll be better. But it's a personal project. It's for me. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
The next one will be better.
And the best part is you built it, so you can build another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But I completely get paralyzed in those decision points too. So I get it. I get halfway through something and go, there's 2 branching paths or 10 branching paths. And I just go, I don't know which way to go. And I just sits there. I've got half-started projects. Well, I've got a half-started project where I combined 2 rooms in my house to try and make it. It was a 4-bedroom and like 1.5 bath. And so I'm making it into a 3-bedroom and 2-bathroom. And in 2016, I ripped down the wall between the 2 bedrooms. And we're in 2020. So it's almost done. But
what does your wife think about that?
My wife thinks that we have way too big of a house anyways, and we don't use it.
Okay.
No.
But she'd also like, if we, once we had our son, when my mother came to visit, we put her up in in the basement. It's not the nicest place to put your mother up to stay, but it's better than nothing. But if I'd finished that room, then we would have a guest room. But it's basically right now down to finishing off some like closet organizational things. I've designed it up in SketchUp, but the challenge right now is kind of COVID happened and no one can come over to help me, and it's just too big of a project to assemble by myself, and that's just like sometimes the challenge of working by yourself is coming up with ways to kind of support projects while you're working on them. Clamps help a lot, but if you're trying to work on something that's, a full closet organizational system, and you want it to be square, like, it just makes it really difficult to try and put all these different dados together, and that's been my big challenge right now on that project is not being able to call a friend and say, hey, can you come over for an afternoon while we throw some glue and screws together on this stuff.
I mean, it sounds like that's the right decision to not just go like, I'll do it. Like, I want to just get it done. I mean, it's your house. That definitely feels like the place where you want to just take time and get it done right. Or, I mean, I like doing it yourself and wait till you have someone who can hold up the drywall while you screw it in.
Yeah, this is like giant pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. So it's not even light. And it's all like I cut dados and everything, and yeah. So it's all like dadoed shelves that are they all need to connect at the same time and put it all together. It's yeah. Once the video comes out in 6 or 7 years, you'll see it. You'll be like, wow, that's so cool. But, I think part of challenging bits of doing what we do is the challenge also of having to try and record everything. There's been so many times where I've caught my elbow doing something fun. You get a nice shot that you're like, oh, this is the part you really want to see it, and all you get to see once you review the footage later is your elbow. You go, oh, why is that? Especially on the drill press. The drill press is the worst for that.
Yeah.
I've knocked over my
I've started
camera so many times.
I've started I have a list going that I keep behind my workshop of like lessons learned from when I go through and edit. Because I find that like if I really zero in on a project, sometimes you start to forget about the camera.
Yeah.
And most of it revolves around just like remembering that the camera is there and trying to remember the framing. But sometimes it's like if I finish an action, like let it rest for a second so that I can leave space in the edit for a transition. And it's not like my hands are all jittery and like moving around and everything else. Like I'm amazed by Laura Kampf and her ability to just like place things so nicely. And like, you can tell she's made a lot of videos because of how much in camera or on camera control she has. It's amazing.
She's amazing.
It's funny you say that. Like I've never done the whole like leave it for a second before you walk off and all that. And then when I sent Richard my clips for the collab we did, he sent me back a message. He's like, do you have any more footage if you're like standing there or what? Because like I sent him a cut clip. I didn't want to like send him me walking to and from the camera and that. And I'm like, no, it's literally where I stopped. Like I said my line and I walked off. I didn't think anything of it. Like,
yeah, it's always hard though. There's so many times where I've had like a really good shot almost ruined by exactly what Morley's talking about, where I go right in there right away and like I'm touching the camera and then it's all jiggly, right? Because you're pressing the stop record button. You're like, if I just left it for like a few seconds, I could have had like either a transition or even just the shot wasn't quite done yet. Right.
It's hard because you're basically doing two things at once. Like you're making the project and you're making the video. And a lot of times like those have really conflicting goals. It's like you want to move on to the next step. You're so excited. But like filming is a completely different thing. And I mean like when I leather carve, like I want to get right over the piece. But if I'm doing overhead filming and my head blocks the shot, then I ruined the shot. So it's, I mean, half of it too is finding angles and things where it doesn't feel obtrusive and I can just go and kind of, I have to think about the camera as little as possible while still maximizing like a pretty shot.
Yeah. It's also
even the same with, like not overhead shots, like say the miter saw, for instance. I always hold the piece, because I feed from the left. So I hold the piece on my left hand and I pull down on the miter saw with my right hand. If I film from that side, my whole body's cuts the whole frame out because my hand's holding and I don't, so many times I haven't thought of that. And then I go to edit, I'm like, well, that was a stupid shot. What's the point in that? But then with you, Grant, like, because you use a GoPro, so like you would walk up from the front and just push the button to go, right? Like me, I have to get behind the camera, press record on the screen because it's my phone, and then walk around the camera to get to where I need. So I have that few seconds of like nothing.
So on the GoPro, it's got a screen at the back, so I still do like setting up the shot and everything. I don't know how people like use the GoPro before there was a screen, because you're just pretty much guessing where everything is. I guess that's why it has like wide angle. But
well, you used to be able to link it to your phone. You probably still could, actually.
Yeah, I still can. I don't like that. It's still like GoPro's user interface is probably the worst in the world.
Well, actually, I have the same thing with my camera. Like, I have a G85 by Panasonic. Great camera. And you can transfer photos and videos from the camera to your phone by Wi-Fi. Horrible app. It's like, what monkey behind a typewriter designed this app? But it works.
I was actually about to ask you what you use, Morley. So both you then, because you use a camera, see, with a phone, it's different because you have to press on the screen to record. But so with a camera or the GoPro, do you press the record button from in front of it, or do you always walk behind it?
Depends. Usually I can do it from either angle, but the big problem is I go and grab the phone, right? I go and touch it, or I go and put my hand in front of the camera and ruin what it was looking at, right?
Right.
So it's not even like that I'm pressing on or off and there isn't that extra time. It's the saw blade is still spinning and it's just about to stop and I press the stop record button. Like,
yeah, okay.
Oh, right. If I just had that, like, if it just stopped, it would have been a really cool shot. But
have you guys seen the movie Memento?
I've only heard rumors of it.
Essentially, a guy every day he wakes up, he loses his memory, and he's trying to find who killed his wife. So he tattoos clues on himself, and I feel like that's what we need. You just need to like tattoo on your arm, like "Let saw blade slow down" before hitting stop. Yeah, I mean, I have the luxury of like a flip out screen, so I can really like check the framing. But then that's also kind of a blessing and a curse, because sometimes if I'm doing a wide shot, I'll be going through the edit and see myself like looking at the camera, like as I'm doing something, trying to set up the frame. I'm like, oh, well, now I can't use that part.
So I actually have a question, Morley. So I'm assuming this won't actually apply to you, Greg. I recently bought a new like camera app on my phone, and now I'm actually, before every shot, I focus it and color correct in camera and all that sort of stuff. How do you focus it if you're like talking to the camera? Because like if you're by yourself, you can't tap on the screen like where you're standing and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
So I've done a couple different things. You can do the face tracking focus on my camera, which is I've had mixed results with, and on such a small screen, sometimes it's actually kind of hard to tell if you're actually in focus or not. The autofocus it depends on the camera, right? Like if I just do like autofocus and it samples the entire frame or samples what's moving, or you can set where on the screen it's focusing to. That works pretty well as well. But yeah, I'm kind of lucky that the camera has a pretty good native autofocus, so I'll usually just use that. And I've actually only had to like scrap a shot or use an unfocused shot because I've used the face focus feature, because by it trying to be smart, sometimes it's dumb.
So you would use like autofocus for like a vlog sort of clip, but then use manual focus for other stuff, or do you just always use auto?
I use autofocus probably like 90% of the time. I use manual more if it's a macro shot, or if I'm doing an overhead shot and this is really getting into the weeds, but like if my hand is passing over the object a lot, but I always want the focus to remain on the object, I'll put it in manual focus on the object. But if it's anything like more than 5 or 6 feet away, then autofocus is usually a safe bet.
Yeah.
So I actually have the answer for you, Adam.
Yeah.
It's called a Focus Master. And basically what it is John Hayes, I don't know if he came up with it, but he's the first one I saw. And I've seen a couple other people like J.K. Canvas, and you can make it too. They have these like cardboard cutouts of faces that are the right height for them. So then they know, and then they put it where they think they're going to be standing, and that's where you set your focus to.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that because I have seen John Hayes one. He has a name for it, but I don't remember what it is.
Focus Master.
No, he actually has a name for it.
Picture of it. Okay.
Like, yeah.
I bet he does. I don't watch all of his videos. I watch a lot of his videos. I don't watch all of his videos.
I watched a lot of his old
ones. He's got some views and opinions.
Yes.
You know, another thing that I found challenging for me is that sometimes there's a big gap between when I film something and when I edit it. For a multitude of reasons. Sometimes I do half a project, sit on it for 6 months, 2 years, whatever, and then finally I'm ready to actually make the video.
I've done that quite a few times.
And one of the projects that I did that I found really challenging about that was there's this thing, the kitchen helper or Montessori stool or whatever. It's like a fancy step stool for kids. That's what I called it. Basically, that took me like 6 months to build because I was doing other things in between. And also because, as I was building, I was getting better at filming. But then later it took me another 3 months or 4 months to actually end up doing all the editing on it. And what I found really challenging about it was if I had known what I'd known today, I would have made a way better video and I would have filmed everything better. And I find the biggest challenge is trying to get through a project and doing the filming and getting it out very quickly so that I don't later regret how poor I did at filming it. Now, I know Ethan Carter, he put out a video recently, the guy from Because We Make. He put out a video recently where he had actually done the filming and everything a year prior, and he only got around to putting out the video now. And he talked about this exact problem. So I know it's not just me who finds it sometimes challenging.
No, I 100% agree. Even like the toolkart video, I know I keep talking about it, but I had an edit of like the first half of it that I had done like 4 months ago. And then all I kept thinking going into it was, I don't remember how I edited it. My editing style has changed. Like my video style has changed. Like I'm going to have like half of a crap video and then half of my new style video, and it's all not going to line up right. And then a couple of videos I've done like 6 months between as well, but I haven't edited it till the end or whatever. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
All right, well, for those listening at home, you wouldn't have recognized it, but we just spent the last 20 minutes fiddling around with the fact that Morley's laptop overheated and Zencastr decided it didn't want to do the right thing.
Apparently putting your laptop on blankets is a bad idea. Now I know.
And knowledge is power. So we're back. And now we're going to move on to the recommendations part of our podcast. And I'm going to start today off with Adam. What's your recommendation?
You're going to say, I lost it.
All right. And now we're going to go on to Morley.
Yeah, so my recommendation for this week is a podcast episode. So I've listened to, longtime listener of Planet Money. It's an NPR podcast, mostly about the U.S. economy in kind of like fun storytelling way. It actually started out as an episode of This American Life, so it has that similar sort of like storytelling vibe. they're fun. Like, you don't have to know economics to know about it, but especially during coronavirus and everything else, they've really they have some really great episodes about like how everything is working. And they just hit their 1,000th episode, and they had a super cool 1,000th episode. So they basically, like, 1,000 episodes, you have they've had like 25 hosts. They've had a lot of tropes, they've kind of memed themselves to death. And they basically spent that 1,000th episode like taking you through the anatomy of an episode and like really taking you behind the scenes of not just their podcast, but like the structure of a storytelling sort of like news / educational / humor podcast style. It was really, really fun to listen to. I think anyone who makes a podcast or is really into podcasts would enjoy it, even if you don't listen to Planet Money. So that is my recommendation for this week.
All right.
I loved it.
I'll have to check that out because, like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, so.
And make one.
And right, and we're on one too. I forgot all about that one.
I'm actually going to change my recommendation because I had a channel, but since you guys talked about them so much last week, I have been listening to Fools with Tools and going to recommend them.
Awesome.
Every time I've listened to a podcast, it's always been like one person telling a story or three people having a conversation. And their structure of having just the two of them just talk and have a conversation is so... what's the word? Like, I don't know, it's just so interesting and just brings you in. Like, you just listen to it and it's really good. They have... I'm only on like episode 10, but feels like they're being...
I was going to say, you must be listening from the beginning since there's only two people.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
Well, it just went from having... I don't even remember who the first host was now, but now from Ours Hack Shack's on there. Is he... Actually, don't tell me if he leaves. So...
Well, soon they'll have a captain come and join them too.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Well, that's exciting then.
Well, that's a good one. I just finished listening to the entire back catalog of Fools with Tools last week.
Yeah.
Or the week before. What I will say is we were on Spotify before they were.
Wow.
Just putting that out there. They
Gauntlet has been thrown.
Yeah. But since apparently podcasts, I'm going to change my recommendation as well. And instead of recommending a YouTube video, I'm going to recommend a podcast too, because I think that's fitting and it made my life more challenging by having to come up with something. But it's very easy because I'm going to recommend you listen to the latest episode of Because We Make, mainly because they mention my name, or Vincent mentions my name. But also they had David Picciuto from Make Something on there. And he has an interesting story to tell. And I think, he's one of those guys who's been around for a while. And I think you can learn a lot from someone like that on, a lot of different things to learn. Anyways, listen, I don't want to give it all away. So listen to the podcast. It's... like I said, my name's mentioned, so there's at least that good part of it.
Yeah, I listened to it as well. I also really, really liked it. And it's funny. I feel like I've heard both Jimmy and Bob on other people's podcasts and kind of like talk about themselves at length, but I never really heard David like outside the context of the three of them talking at length. And it was really great. It was cool to learn more about him and his perspective and story.
We both listen to a lot of podcasts I haven't heard before.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next part, I want to talk about a new section of our podcast called Reading Reviews. It's actually something I'm going to be taking and stealing from the Because We Make podcast. And what I'm going to be saying is we would really appreciate if you would leave us a review. And if you do leave us a review, whether it's good or bad or ugly, we're going to read it on the air. Well, on the recording, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to give you a shout out, so make sure you put your name in there. So if you have something to say, go ahead and say it.
We'll also come up with a better name than reading reviews. Something along the name, something along with Clamp. But also, in saying that, if your favorite podcast player doesn't allow you to leave a review, just send us a message on Instagram and let us know what you think, and we can read that out too.
Yeah, we're at Clampcast on Instagram.
That's correct.
And you can find us at clamp.buzzsprout.com. That's the web address. And where can everyone find you, Adam?
So you can find me on YouTube and Instagram under Maker Mackie. And as we've said in every other episode, we mainly only use YouTube and Instagram.
And how about you, Morley?
You can find me on Instagram and YouTube as well under Yellrom Blog, spelled like it sounds.
Just like Morley backwards.
Just like it.
And you guys, everyone can find me at The Grant Alexander on all the social medias, including the ones I don't use, like Twitter. Anyways, I appreciate everyone for taking the time out of their day to listen to us. And thank you very much. And one thing, don't forget, got to thank TF Turning for the outro music.
And intro.
And intro music. Thank you for the music.
Awesome.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Bye.
Should I have said more?
You didn't say bye.
Goodbye?
Well, I thought we'll finish here more with keep clamping.
Oh yeah, and don't forget, you got to keep clamping. Bye.
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 Hello and welcome to Clamp, the Creating, Making, and Living podcast. I'm your host, Grant Alexander, and before I get into who is joining me this week, I have some good news and some bad news.
Hang on.
First, what?
You just said camel pee. Creating, Making, and Living.
I also noticed that. I was like, are we going to roll with it? Or?
What was I thinking?
Creating, making, and living. Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's all good, but it doesn't spell the right thing.
You should just say, welcome to the Camel Pee podcast. And go from there.
All right. Well, you can throw Camel Pee in at the end as a secret bonus for anyone who listens that long.
Sounds good.
I like that.
Hello and welcome to Clamp. I have like a script written out so that I don't fuck it up. That's why I totally fucked it up. Whew.